Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Super excited to see what this gentleman is going to provide us with today. Insight on the paranormal. That's what he does. He and his team investigate paranormal situations, specifically in the North Carolina area, but they'll travel if something's going on. It's all part of Great State Paranormal, and Dustin Crowley is back with us. Hey, Dustin, how you doing?
Doing good, Steve. Thanks for having me back on.
So far, we've learned a lot in talking with you about the paranormal, the investigation process. You've also taken us through a couple of examples last time we got together of just being on site, things that best description spooked you. And this is what you do. So for something to kind of get you a little off edge, it had to be pretty substantial. You have pictures to show today, right?
I do have a few.
I say we go right to them. Let's look at them. Let's dig in. Curious as to what they are and where you took them, or maybe somebody took them for you and presented them.
So the first one, it is actually from New Orleans, which is one of my favorite places to go. Not just for the paranormal, but I mean, you can't go wrong with beignets and all of the really fresh seafood and the culture.
Sure.
So, let's see. So,
all right.
This was taken at the Lalaurie Mansion, which, for those who may not be familiar with it, if you have seen American Horror Story Season 3, this is the mansion that the white slave owner would have ran, and it actually was the site of some pretty atrocious acts. It was so bad that there were reports that slaves threw themselves off of the building to commit suicide. There was a report that a fire was started during a party, and it was because one of the slaves was chained to the stove so that she couldn't leave and had to stay and cook.
Wow.
So terrible, terrible place. That being said, when I took this picture, I was able to detect this light anomaly, which isn't too hard to see. To me, this presents almost as if it is one of the spirits that committed suicide by jumping off of a building.
I got to tell you, when you first put this photo up, that's the first thing my eyes went to. Right there, right away to it. What the heck is that?
So we would probably call this an orb. I'm typically rather skeptical because, especially in a place like New Orleans, an orb in a camera can be any type of light reflection. So
Sure.
if there's moisture in the air, it could present as like a little droplet. If there's a bug in the air, it could be a bug. And it's just anything that's passing the lens in that split second. So a lot of people talk about orbs, but a good chunk of them are discreditable.
Is
But
this a picture that you took or somebody gave you?
I took this one.
You did. Okay. Wow. So you're even doubting it yourself looking at it. It's like, I don't know
Yeah.
what that is, but maybe it's something impactful. Maybe it isn't.
Well, that's always the thing. You have self-doubt. And part of the things that kind of reinforce it for me is you don't see anywhere else on the picture any other light anomalies.
What is the bright light in the lower left-hand side? Yes, that above it, right there.
This
Yeah.
this is just a reflection coming off of this street lamp.
Gotcha.
You
Okay.
can't see because it's just a big bright spot, but it is a really fancy, ornate lamp, and it does have these little lines going down the side of it. So this one I can pretty easily debunk and say that that is just light reflecting from the lamp on the lens.
Gotcha. So that light object, maybe an orb that you first referred to. Uh,
Oh, and this is a great example here too.
hmm,
A lot of people would call this an orb.
looks like a light to me.
That is most likely a bug
Okay.
because you don't see any other lights down here.
Right.
But if you look closely, you've got a body and you've got two wings.
Hmm.
So kind of interesting that all in one picture, you've got two or even three things, because even with this, you would have to debunk it. But when you see that it is matching the same reflections coming off of this
Hmm.
car's
Yep.
hood ornament, you can easily make that connection.
Yep. I love your detail. And I see the same exact thing that right lower right hand corner light's reflection, the other light or object repeats the same shape. So, obviously it's some kind of light situation that's getting repeated.
Yep. And what I like the most about this one in particular is this is all happening in the dark part of the picture frame.
Hmm.
So there's no other light source in this area. The closest thing you have is this one, and that's beside the building. So there's nothing that we know of that could be causing this reflection.
What's after the careful analysis, what's your thoughts on that greenish object on that dark side of the building?
The best I can come up with is that it is a light anomaly. Others would call it an orb. It's
Hmm.
logical to suspect it is most likely a residual haunting of a spirit reenacting their own passing, whether they jumped or were thrown from a building.
Hmm.
Um, Hard to say. And that's one of the pitfalls of the paranormal is with the scientific method, you do everything repeatable. I can never repeat this picture because the atmospheric conditions, the temperature, where the cars parked, the brightness of the bulbs and all of the lights, the time of day, the time of year. This is not going to be something that's replicatable. So you can never empirically say 100% that this is a picture of a spirit. But as best as we can go through and determine, we can say that this is something spiritual.
Hmm. Interesting. Wow. How long ago did you take that picture?
Oh, let's see. 2021, I want to say.
Gotcha. And why did you take it? Was there a reason you just, you recognize the building, American Horror Story? There is a story with the building. Just you wanted a picture of it.
Yep.
Okay.
We were taking a ghost tour because, of course, I take those every chance I get when I visit a new city.
Sure.
And when we came on the Lullaby Mansion, I was like, hey, this is really cool. I'm probably not going to see this again for a long time. I definitely want a picture of this to kind of remember the place.
Did you take multiple pictures?
I did.
Okay.
The others are extremely blurry and grainy, but this light anomaly here is still in one of the other pictures. I don't have it on my computer, but I can post that on my social media account
Mm-hmm.
later today. That way, anyone that wants to see the other pictures that were taken at the same time can see both of those back to back.
The more I'm looking at this photo, the more I am thinking that greenish, bluish greenish object may be just a reflection or repeating within the camera of that bright light in the lower left-hand corner.
It's possible.
Yeah. Hmm. And when you took other photos, you didn't have great results. Was it just because it was so dark?
it was dark, and iPhone camera technology at the time, not to be confused with Android phone technology at the time, the cameras weren't really all that great in low light.
Yeah.
So uh, you had to make sure to hold the camera nice and still for, I want to say it was like 2 or 3 seconds for it to open up the aperture enough to let light in.
Sure.
And as this was the end of a day on my trip to New Orleans, and it was right off of Bourbon Street, I was, let's just call it, less than sober.
Yeah. Okay. Not a strong chance of holding still for the 2 to 3 seconds needed, but
Not completely.
gotcha. What you got a picture, and it's interesting. What else can we look at today?
So this next one, I was asked to review by a peer. And from the outside looking in, for one, it is a really interesting photograph.
It is.
It looks a little bit disgusting on the left-hand side, especially when you know that that light is being cast by a black light.
Which I got right away, by the way.
I figured, but the anomaly that I was asked to review was obviously this.
Right.
So, in breaking down this photograph, one of the things that I was able to determine, and this I did in 2023. So, I've got better technology to review stuff at this time. And this photograph is actually a long exposure photo. And even though they didn't outright say what the light source anomaly was, they did say that they used some laser pointers to highlight where they believed the spirit was. So it took me a little while to get that out of them. But in this one, the light anomaly, even though it looks like all of the light is radiating from this one streak, they had the camera going in a delayed focus, so open for a long period of time.
Uh-huh.
They used their laser pointer to go up and down in the doorway.
Yep.
And that created, objectively, it's a cool photograph.
No doubt. Especially
Very
with the black
artistic.
light.
Like,
Got
I
it.
would hang this in my office. It looks really pretty. Well, creepy pretty. But
Mm-hmm.
that being said, no spiritual phenomenon.
Yeah. And picture when somebody does a time lapse photo to capture lightning. Kind of the same thing.
Yep.
And basically, this is what we're looking at there is the laser pointer that was pulled from the top down to the bottom of that doorway. The black light over to the left there. I that would have been my tip off. Like, this is not any regular picture.
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? It's not like somebody just was in a room and they yeah. And okay.
And I mean, you can even see
The dot.
the dot.
Yeah.
You can't make it out for the rest of it, but I mean, and not only that, but it's so much brighter where it started.
Yeah.
Pretty easy. Now,
Yeah.
my only tip would be if I was going to consult on this case, the homeowners probably desperately should clean all of that.
What's going on back there?
I don't know, Steve, and I don't know if I want to know. Because that could be anything from cats. It could be that maybe this freezer is where they store game that they kill, and they maybe slaughter it back here. I don't know, but it's disgusting and it's gross. And
Is that a
if
garbage
I ever
can
was
lid?
invited, when I zoomed in, it looks like it is. So, yeah, moral of this story, if you get invited, skip on the meal.
Yeah. And again, cool picture, especially with the right-hand side being in shadow. It leads your eye to the center with the red. Um, there's an element of definite coolness to the picture, but bogus too.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah. So the next one I've got, and this one is a personal favorite of mine. So it's going to be kind of hard to tell, but I'm the president of a community theater. And after one of our Christmas shows back in 2022, we use shredded paper for snow because when you're a community theater, you don't have money and you can't afford to buy it like fake snow.
Sure.
And so we had to go and clean up the auditorium after the performance. And a friend of mine had actually taken a panorama shot of the entire stage. And that is the edge of the stage right here. So we weren't looking for anything paranormal. We weren't looking for anything out of the ordinary. We were just taking a picture of how messy the auditorium was, as one does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, in closer inspection, my friend pointed out that there is this outline of a person in the doorway.
That's the first thing I thought.
And for a little bit of additional context, back through this doorway to the left is where you would go to the dressing rooms, and then to the right is where you would go to the green room to go onto stage. And there's not really much in this doorway. It is all empty except for just a few boxes that were stacked up right in the bottom corner here. So when you look in at this picture, you clearly see the outline of the head and a shoulder.
Yep.
So this theater, we have also seen a tall, dark figure constantly lurking around the auditorium. And our thought process behind it is that this could be that figure. Now, in trying to debunk it and taking the screenshot of this, it does make it a little bit difficult. But the door on the other side ends right up here. So if this shadow was the doorway, it should be about another 2 feet taller. And you can slightly see this granular line here on where the doorway ends. And there is nothing circular shaped back there. So even if this was the natural doorway, there's nothing explaining this part, much less either the smile or the collar or whatever this part could be.
What are your feelings?
My feelings is it could be the spirit that people have reported seeing. It could also just be a trick of the light. That being said, all the lights backstage, the green room, the dressing rooms, the hallway, everything was off. So theoretically, that should just all be one shade of dark, not multiple shades. So again, I'll have to say inconclusive because there's no replicating it. And what I like the most about this one in particular is no one was taking a picture looking for something spiritual. It was just a panorama of a stage, and it just so happened to catch it. So when you're not going out with like an agenda, I want to find this, I want to look for this, and then something like this happens, it does give it a little bit more credence.
The object, and then it looks like there's a head on the object. it looks like a white collar, or that where the neck would be. Are you
Hmm.
seeing that as well?
Yes. Um, and in particular, in this theater, when we've investigated it in the past, we have gotten references to a reverend or a minister that is still lingering around because it was at one time the site of one of the first churches in the county.
Well, that's interesting. Again, you weren't looking for that. Can we zoom into that white object just one more time?
Yep.
Interesting.
And what I like the most about it is it doesn't take up the entire like head and neck area. So just like how a priest would have the collar, and then you've
Right.
still got the black around it, you still kind of have that same motif here.
Wow. Um, I I'm seeing that, and that's the feeling I'm getting. But then you said that there's a connection to a, a religious connection to the building. So just those pieces all kind of come together there. Interesting.
Yep.
Wow.
And again, like I said in the first photo, we can never truly 100% empirically say this is or is not a spiritual picture.
Hmm.
But I mean, you know, still pretty compelling.
And like you said, how are you going to duplicate that?
Yep. In this one in particular, it'd be impossible.
Yeah. And it truly, even if you look quickly, zoomed out, it really does look like a person.
Yep.
Hmm.
I'd say it's probably one of the most conclusive snapshots I've seen. Um, and even with that, like I just did with you here, if I can debunk it, if I can say that that's not what it was, I'm always going
Mhm.
to.
What if you were going to buy into the fact that that could be a figure? What do you, what is your gut first go to as to what it is and the story behind it?
Well, knowing the history, my first reaction would be that it would be the Reverend that has been reported, um, especially given the presence of the collar, being that it's tall. We've seen tall figures in this particular room. So it seems to be someone that is at least tied to the building and the history of the location.
Wow. Fascinating. Like super cool. and and looking at it through your eyes and what you're feeling, and even the New Orleans picture, debunking that one. This is just a piece of what you do. And many of us have taken pictures and wondered. I have a picture from a cacao ceremony. I don't know if you know what that is, but they use
Loosely.
chocolate from a tropical rainforest. Um, it just produces a euphoric kind of feel, allegedly. Most purest chocolate on the planet. Nothing
Hmm.
else added to it. And I was part of a ceremony. It was in a like a yoga suite, and there was a lot of energy exchange in the room. People were crying at some point, just letting things out. And they took some pictures, and there were what I'd have to say legit orbs lying around. And this was somebody just standing there taking a picture. There wasn't any filters or anything going on, but there were repeated pictures of the orbs in different spots. Um, just from the exchange of energy that day, I think it's a show of energy above the people. I really do.
Could be. Because I mean,
Yeah,
especially if you've got that many people, if it was outside, you can always say, well, maybe they're kicking up dust from the ground
right.
or moisture. But if it's inside,
It was inside.
I
Yeah.
mean, granted, if it's a really dusty house,
No.
maybe, but then you're not going to have it just above someone. It's going to be everywhere.
Right. And there were a few maybe here, but most of them were above. Um, and in subsequent pictures, in different spots, it was repeated. So it wasn't just a one-off where the camera just got a reflection and repeated it. Yeah, wild. How do we?
That's really cool.
I got to go get that picture. Dustin, how do we connect with you? If somebody's got pictures, they want investigation, whatever it might be, how do they find you?
So you can find me on Facebook and Instagram. You can find me using the handle the Dustin Crowley. You can also follow me at Great State Paranormal, greatstateparanormal.com. And you can reach out to me on those platforms as well.
Thank you for today. Thanks for sharing the pictures and your insight. We don't get to normally do this. So it really is, it's super cool. I look forward next time we get together. Thanks again.
Thanks, Steve.
We'll be right back.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.